Welcome back to a rainy day in the shop. Today, I'm going to be working on this center dash. This center dash has a lot of switches and features and things that I'm just trying to figure out just to make it easier to repair and troubleshoot issues if they arise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's got 6 switches and I know what 5 of them do. There's one that switches, lights up. I can hear a relay click, but nothing happens. So I'm not sure what that's wired to. The wiring behind the dash is pretty trick. It's all run through relays and circuit breakers, and it looks pretty clean. So what I want to do today is better understand how all these switches are wired, where the wires go from there, and then what each relay does. And when I was working on the fuel pump issue, I did find that there was a power wire that was disconnected from one of these breakers, and I repaired that, and then this upper light bar started working. So that's great. So I want to pull all these relays out and inspect them, because it looked like there was one that was unplugged and a couple looked like they had gotten loose. So, oh, and also in there is the ARB compressor, and that runs and recharges more often than it should, meaning that there's an air leak, and I can actually hear hissing air from somewhere on the compressor. So I'll get some soapy water and we'll pinpoint that, hoping that it's just remove a leaky fitting, put on new sealant on the threads, and put it back together. All right, so I got this side panel pulled off, and this exposes all these parts to the wiring system. 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 8 relays. All of these are the backside of the circuit breakers, and then I don't really know what these are. SA, in, hot. So a lot to learn here. I'm just going to give everything a close look and make sure it's all tight and plugged in. You can see, like right here, one of these relays look like they come apart pretty easily. So I'm just going to make sure they're all plugged in and see if I can figure out what this switch goes to. We have fan. All these are lights. This one is the one I don't know what it goes to. So try and chase those wires down and see where they go. Okay, so here's what I learned. And please comment down below if I'm way off here, but just trying to trace these wires. Main power comes in from the battery here, and it's distributed, what did I count, 11 ways out of this. And those go straight to the circuit breakers. You can see there's hot on both sides. And then those jump across the circuit breaker and then go into each relay. And from each relay, there's a wire that either goes to the device itself, so the light bar, or the, what else do I have? Light bars, oh, rock lights and interior lights. And then there's a ground, or no, there's a power and a switch. The switch are all these colored ones, and they come off of the same spot on each one of these switches. So I do have a loose connection here, and I have this ground wire here that looks like it should be with this yellow one, which is also really loose. So I'm going to work on just cleaning this up a little bit, double checking and reinstalling all these relays, and then I'll bolt it back up. I did find one wire that's pretty messed up, about to break. This is the upper light bar. It took me forever to figure out what that said. Upper light bar. Nice. So that's super frayed, rusty, and about to break. yeah, this is the power wire going up to the upper light bar. Oh shit, where did it go? Oh, right here. Okay, so we'll change this end out and put it back together. And here comes a train. All right, I'm gonna be diagnosing this ARB air compressor. I can hear air coming out of it, and the first thing I'm gonna do is fire it up and spray some soapy water around the fittings and see if I can find where it's leaking. I guess it's gonna be one of these 3 fittings right here. So here comes some soapy water. Let's see what happens. Oh yeah, look at that. See those bubbles? So the left one for sure. The middle one also. So I'll go ahead and shut this all off and pull off these 2 fittings and see what I find out. All right, I got the problem fitting out. I had a little bit of sealant on it. I can't tell if it was tape or like the liquid kind. Also pulled off this part. This looks like a pressure switch that has an O-ring. That's nice. So I'll grab some Teflon tape and wrap this up. When you're wrapping Teflon tape on a fitting like this, you want to make sure that when you thread the fitting in, that the leading edge of the tape is facing in a direction that will go into the threads easily. If it's in the opposite direction, it can get bound up by the threading action. So now you'll see with that leading edge right there, as I'm threading this in, you can't catch the edge of the tape. If you had it in the opposite way and you spun it around, you would run the risk of catching. See that? You'd catch the edge. So that looks good. I'll do the other side and we'll get this thing installed. Okay, tighten the little bolts on the side, and that looks pretty good. Do you see any bubbles building up? I would say so. That looks like it's still leaking. I got my fittings all cleaned up, resealed, tightened, reoriented so they're out of the way of this harness in front. They're reoriented now so they face backwards so that when this piece of the dash goes forward, they don't rub. No leaks in the compressor area, but when I test it, it's still cycling about every 30 seconds, which isn't ideal. So then I went up here to the front axle and I sprayed some soapy water on this broken vent, and it's pushing air out. So there's a leak with the ARB mechanism somewhere in the locker itself. I haven't pulled apart this front axle yet, so when I do that, that's when I'll figure that out. So next on the hit list today, while I have this all apart, is this water temp sensor. I'm not even sure really how it works, but it goes back here, and this cable's in pretty bad shape. That's a really, really hot area right by the headers, and I don't know if hot water actually travels through this line or if it's just like a wire that somehow senses the change in temp, but either way it doesn't work. So let's, I'm gonna pull this little fitting. You see that right in there? Pull that fitting off and hope that Well, wouldn't you think that bunch of coolant would come out? I don't know. I gotta think about this for a second. Well, I pulled the temp gauge out and made a mess. And I ended up cutting it. So I pulled the fitting out, spilt coolant everywhere, fiddled with it, tried to make it work. It's dead, so I'm just gonna replace it and hope that fixes the problem. The center dash is back together, all but the temperature gauge, which will be on its way. Feel good about this. I've got all these switches working and accounted for. I did a little cleanup on the other side with the stereo so that the Bluetooth receiver will be on this side within reach. So now I want to put the seat in, but before I do that, I want to go through and clean up this floor. I've got a wire wheel on my drill, and I'm just going to go and try and flake off as much of this. This is like a spray-on bed liner, and it's pretty obvious that water was collecting right here when this thing was sitting for the last couple years. So I'm just going to go wire wheel this off and see if I can get down to some clean metal and throw some paint on it, because it'd be near impossible to get to when the seat's in. Oh, what is that? Someone's getting some new grass. Welcome back to the shop. Today, I only have about an hour to do this, or actually just to show you, because it's not dry yet. I was working on this rusted area under the seat. Basically, this whole floor pan that they built is made out of, oops, that was probably really loud. I don't know what this is, 1/8 inch steel. So it's a little rusted in spots. They have this spray and bed liner over top of it. So anywhere that has cracked, and then with this thing sitting for so long, it started to rust up pretty good. So I went in with the wire wheel yesterday, and I was getting a lot of these kind of flakes off. And then I came in and sprayed this phosphoric acid, and this prepares rusted surfaces for painting, and it's pretty amazing actually. You spray it on anything rusty and some science happens, and then I'll show you on this side. So here's a good test piece. This is a cooler bracket the previous owner used. So it was not painted at all, and it sat out for 2 years or whatever. So here's where I sprayed. I sprayed just this section here, and you could see where it changes the rust from brown to black. And so it basically neutralizes the rust. And then on the bottle it says you can just wait for it to dry and then paint right over it. So you leave that layer of protection under the paint to stop the spread of future rust. So I went through yesterday afternoon and just went and sprayed anywhere where there was signs of rust, even this little bracket in here. So I was hoping it would be dry this morning so I could lay down some paint. Looks like I missed a spot right here on this seatbelt mount, but it's not dry yet, so maybe on the next one I'll be able to do that. I did paint this little glove box that goes right here, and it has a USB plug in it. That's what that red wire hanging down is for. So we'll get that put back in. So yesterday I was working on this broken water temp gauge, which has a copper line in it with some sort of mystery fluid in it that goes to a probe. I don't know where the probe went, so I'm assuming the probe heats up and then the pressure changes in the copper tube, and that's what gives you your temp. I couldn't figure out why this thing wasn't working, but then I had a thought. So this part was behind the dash. This was in the dash, And then they had this part completely kinked and zip tied up. So I bet you that they kinked that copper line. I bet you that this gauge probably never even worked if it was installed like that. Because everything else was fine. I did find a little bit of a spot where a mouse or a rat had chewed on this rubber, but it wasn't making it through that tiny copper line. That was fine. And when I cut it, it was pressurized and it has this weird smell. I'm curious what that is, but I ordered a new one. So I think I'll really pay attention to how to manage this extra line. If it stayed more like in a circle and didn't have any sharp kinks in it, I think it probably would have worked. Okay, I was about to put in this glove box. I wanted to show you something, type of thing that I keep my eye out for. Under here is the computer, the ECU for the engine, and the wiring. Most of the wiring harness is bundled up here. And if you look at this white, you see that white wire is a ground. It's grounded to the mount that the ECU is held in by. And it's just bare, it's a bare wire that's running unprotected right over this metal bracket. So eventually that's just gonna sit there and vibrate and rub and rub and rub. And then I'll have a ground issue with the wiring harness and the engine probably would shut off and it would take me forever to find. So what I'm gonna do is just protect the wire. I'm gonna put a little loom on it just so it's rubbing on loom instead of rubbing on the wire itself. All right, here is the solution I came up with. I had to pull the mount for the ECU off so I could get the wire on the outside of the bracket so it wouldn't be rubbing out of sight. Pull those off, a little bit of loom and a zip tie, and that should last a long time and be safe. All right, now we can get this glove box in. Got the glove box all put back together, repainted, USB outlet here. When I turn this on, so that'd be nice to have to charge phones, camera batteries, etc. When we're out camping. What's next? Still got a few more minutes here, so I'm gonna pull all the seatbelts out. I wanna pull all the seatbelts out and soak them in some hot water with some soap. Just get the dirt off of them, see if I can soften them up a little bit. They're still in decent shape. They're kind of old, but I'm not racing. They don't need to meet a certain spec. We'll get them all cleaned up and give them a good review, and then I can decide whether or not to use them or get something new. Pretty good progress in the last, 2 hours. I got all the seatbelts pulled out. I got the cooler mount pulled out. I've got all the rusty areas sprayed down with that acid. And once that all dries, I can wipe it all down and put down some paint. I reinstalled the glove box, got that painted. And I've got the seat belts. You can see how dirty that water is already. Just with some warm water and soap. So let that soak for a few hours. Stick around for next week where we get to do the fun stuff. I'm gonna pull this thing around the corner into the garage so that I can be in a nicer environment, out of the dust and the sun and the rain, because I'm gonna pull this front end apart. Wheels and tires, knuckles, shafts, third member. I gotta figure out why that ARB is leaking. I gotta figure out what ring and pinion are in it, what axle shafts are in it, what the condition of the hub gear is, what the condition of the shafts are. So that'll be pretty exciting because I don't know the status of any of that stuff. We know it's been used and abused. So cross your fingers that there's something beefy in there and something that I can continue to use for the near future.